Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our special budget meeting on, hard to believe it already, November 29th. I'll call the meeting to order and need to adopt the agenda. So a recommendation that the agenda for the November 29th, 2023 special meeting of council be accepted and passed. Moved by Councillor McCabe, seconded by Councillor Rankin. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest on anything on today's agenda?
I have none.
Okay,
I have none.
Councillor Hearn?
No.
And I don't have any either. So we'll move right on to O Canada. So if we could rise for O Canada.
Keep working on that.
Okay, we'll move on. We'll master the technicalities.
Yours is going to work, Jerry. Promise you.
Okay, so first up is our presentation from Jerry on the revised capital budget. Welcome, Jerry. Before you get started, Jerry, I just wanted to share a little tidbit of information that I received. I was talking with some of my colleagues at County Council about our capital justification sheets and process. And while I recognize that they're somewhat onerous for staff, it does give elected officials a really good idea of what's behind this. And some of my colleagues were saying, can you send me a copy of that? So I was sharing it with some other municipalities across Wellington County. So thanks to you and staff for going through that effort.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of council. Today I present the revised 2024 budget for the Township of Wellington. I presented the first draft of the budget on November 2023. Since that presentation, we have taken your feedback into account and have worked to align our budget with council's directive to maintain the tax levy under 5%. Much of the information in this presentation is the same as last presented to council. As council has not had full opportunity to deliberate on the specific items contained in the budget 2024. As a quick recap, the annual budget is crafted to embody council's values and priorities for Wellington. As mentioned in the last presentation, we initiated the budget process by distributing budget templates to department heads on September 11th, 2023. Today's session marks our second meeting in council on this budget. We have additional meetings planned for December 11th and January 15th, if necessary.
Just use that.
Does it work now? So I'll just go over the slide again for those who missed it. As a quick recap, the annual budget is crafted to embody its council's values and priorities for the Township of Wellington North. As mentioned in our last budget presentation, we initiated the budget process on September 11, 2023. Following this, I had several meetings with department heads through the months of September till November. Today's session marks our second deliberation with council. We've had additional meetings planned for December 11th and January 15th, if necessary. During these discussions, staff are expecting decisions on the tax levy and capital budget projects. Next slide, please. For 2024's budget, the township staff have maintained same levels of budget or service levels in previous years, while incorporating council's in-year approved directions into consideration. However, this year's budget is facing cost pressures due to inflation. To keep councils and the public informed, we have highlighted some of the key areas where we're seeing increases. Wages and salaries increases, this vary from department to department, have been factored into the budget. Health and benefit costs, there's a 9.2% increase from the previous year based on guidance from our plan administrator, Mosey and Mosey. With regards to municipal insurance, we are seeing a rise of about 9% as advised by our insurance broker. Utilities are expected to increase by approximately 2% in 2024. Construction price index, this directly affects materials for construction for roads department, have increased by 6.6% in Q3, to 8.1% in Q2. Next slide, please. Moving to other key impacts for the 2024 budget, we have received the Conservation Authority budgets from all three conservation authorities. Notably, Sogan Valley Conservation Authority presents the highest increase for 2024, with a 33.3% increase year over year. This is primarily due to implementation of Category 2 and Category 3 agreements in 2024. In comparison, Grand River and Maitland Valley Conservation Authority have seen increases of 2.7% and 8.4% respectively. I'll do a quick recap here. Last presentation, we defined what growth looked like for the Township of Wellington North. Growth in this context refers to new assessments, which do not impact current taxpayers. In 2023, Wellington North experienced a reassessment growth of 2.1%. This represents a slight decrease from 2022's 2.26%, and an increase in comparison to 2021, where we saw a growth of 1.48%. For the 2024 tax year, property assessments will remain unchanged. This is in line with the fall economic statement. Senior government levels have chosen to prioritize stability for property taxpayers and municipalities. Therefore, we would continue to use valuations based on January 1st, 2016 as our basis for property tax computations. We will now proceed with the segment by segment recap of the operating budget. Since last presented, there have been no major changes in the segments. I would highlight any adjustments or increases year over year in our budget. General government is the first area we'll look at. Revenue has increased in 2024's budget. This is largely driven by a higher level of investment income from our banking contract with RBC and increased OMPF contributions. Looking at the slide, you see cost increase in administration. This is mainly driven by increased cost of insurance, payroll, and changes in contributions towards capital and reserves. Council has a marginal increase of 2.6%. Next slide. Turning to protection services, which includes fire protection, crossing guards, conservation authority, animal control, building and structure inspections. This segment shows a 11.5% increase in the budget. The primary factors driving the increase are addition of staff to the fire department, a decision approved by council earlier in the year. Implementation of category 2 and 3 by the Sorghum Valley Conservation Authority. And this budget also reflects the rise we've seen in activities in animal control. Next slide. Moving to transportation services, we are seeing an increase in roads expenses, primarily due to market cost pressures. This includes inflationary pressures as indicated in our construction price index of 6.6% in Q3 2023. This directly affects the cost of materials used for road construction. Additionally, this segment is influenced by township-wide cost pressures such as insurance, payroll, and contributions towards capital projects. Next. In the next two segments, we would see notable changes. Health services expenses in this segment has increased, and it's primarily due to interfunctional transfers and increased wages and benefits. Parks and recreation, there's a decrease in expenses driven largely by reorganization of functions and programs to community and economic development. This is offset by changes in interfunctional transfers or locations, alongside increases in wages, cleaning and maintenance, and expenses for hydro and insurance. Community and economic development budget is up for 2024 to accommodate the addition of a community development coordinator. As previously mentioned, this in last presentation, this role was approved by council and will contribute significantly towards the funding of the Mount Forest pool. This budget also reflects a fully staffed department next year, including the manager for community and economic development and transfers from park and recreation due to reorganization. Next slide. There's increase in the planning budget, which is due to changes in interfunctional transfer allocations, along with wage and benefit increase. Additionally, we're also seeing increase in the cost for engineering and consulting. Next. In summary, the total anticipated increase in the operating budget amounts to $634,795, representing a 7.04% increase. This figure includes transfers to capital, as well as transfers to reserves and reserve funds. The slide in front of you illustrates for the 2024 capital program, as well as the reserves and reserves funds, the allocations that have been made. The transfers to 2024 have increased by $176,777, a 5.66% increment. As previously mentioned, these contributions to capital reserves and reserve funds are included in the 7.04% operating budget increase already discussed in the earlier slides. When we combine the proposed operating budgets, policy mandated transfers, net transfers to reserves and reserve funds, and the 2024 capital program, the result is a 4.94% levy increase for existing taxpayers. This figure represents a 7.04% increase, offset by organic growth of 2.1% increment. Key assumptions contributing to this result include all levy-related capital projects, unless specifically identified, are funded by contributions to capital. 2, a 1.97 million contribution for OCRF is assumed for 2024 capital program, matching what we received for 2023. The current capital model includes a $350,000 contribution to capital for the Mount Forest pool, as approved by council in the last year's budget cycle. In this slide, we would also see a breakdown of where the budget dollars have gone. The highest, I'll name the 3 highest allocations from the budget: roads at 44%, recreation at 20%, admin and general government at 13%. Next slide, please. Staff are proposing net transfers to reserve and reserve funds that maintains alignment with policy and consistent with previous year's trends. The net transfer to reserve is set at $1.3 million for 2024, primarily driven by increased contributions to sewer and water reserves. Building on our operating budget discussion so far, I will transition to examining the tax levy impact implications for existing taxpayers. The total amount we aim to raise is approximately $9.6 million. This, when applied against the weighted property assessment for Wellington North, results in the tax rates displayed on the screen. For a clearer understanding, consider a typical single-family dwelling valued at $271,600 based on the January 1st, 2016 assessment. Applying this year's tax rate against that property valuation, it translates to a tax bill of $1,468 as the township's portion of the tax bill. In comparing this to last year's bill for a similar assessment, this represents an increase of $65.77. Before going into the 2024 capital budget details, let's quickly revisit the three different infrastructure needs assessments that were shared with Council on November 20th. First, we have the assessment from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. Second, it's an assessment from the Township's 2021 Asset Management Plan. And thirdly, we have the summary based on staff's understanding of the Township's infrastructure's needs over the next decade. In the slide in front of you, we'll focus on the asset consumption ratio. This ratio reflects the proportion of the asset's life expectancy that has been consumed, indicating the relative age of our physical assets. Wellington's North's ratio stands at 54.5%, notably higher than the provincial average of 46.9%. This indicates that our asset base is relatively older in comparison to similar lower tier municipalities. Reviewing the 5-year trend, we have consistently been above average, signaling a need to action to bring this trend closer or below the provincial average. The next slide is from our 2021 Asset Management Plan. The township needs to invest $16.5 million annually to maintain current infrastructure and support planned expansion for growth. The graph displayed shows that from 2018 to 2020 and continuing through 2023, we have been investing an average of $11.6 million. However, given our forecasted need of $16.5 million per year, we currently have a gap of about $4.5 million annually. 4.9, sorry. The next slide summarizes staff's understanding of the township's infrastructure needs for the next 10 years. It includes major capital projects as well as regular renewal and maintenance projects. With inflation factored across the years to meet these needs, we estimate a requirement close to $200 million for the identified projects over the coming decade. Next slide. Given the current funding levels projected over the next 10 years, we're able to fund approximately $91 million, resulting in a gap of $108 million. However, as I mentioned in the last presentation, that actual gap is a little bit smaller, about $100 million, considering the fact that we cannot reasonably estimate the number of senior government grants that we receive, like the Connecting Link grant. With this context about our capital needs, I'll transition to the specific request for 2024 capital budgets. For the general government segment, we are proposing 11 projects for a total of $932,000. The first, accessible workstations for $20,000. Further contributions to asset management for $70,000. IT infrastructure and security enhancement for $50,000. Mount Forest West Gray employment lands for $15,000. Mount Forest Archives stairs and handrail repairs for $20,000. Our share of the municipal drain for $124,000. HR organization review for $25,000. Walk yard upgrades for $50,000. A generator for the Auto Arena and Community Center for $160,000. The former Arthur Municipal Office renovation, the design for $9,000, and the Arthur Community Center Upper Hall renovation for $389,000. Turning to the building department, we have one project for 2024, the acquisition of a pickup truck. This will support the work of our newly hired permit technology distributing inspector. Next. Wellington North Fire Services have proposed 3 projects for a total of $160,000. Field station and compressor for $70,000, rescue equipment for $60,000, and bunker gears for PPE purchases for $30,000. For transportation services, the total budget request for 2024 is $7.3 million. This includes key projects like road reconstruction, coverage replacements, asphalt resurfacing, and pedestrian crossovers. Additionally, transportation services is requesting funding for equipment, a tractor for $300,000, a plow truck for $420,000, 2 new vehicles, one being a replacement of an existing pickup truck. Environmental services have 5 projects proposed for 2024. The first, groundwater model phase 1, $18,000. Southwater Streets design for $22,500. Well casing liner for well 3 at $135,600. Aqua purchase of $266,000. Important to note here that the auto wastewater treatment plant, the phase 2 upgrade for it is a user fee funded project, and we'll bring that to council as discussed in the last session for its funding strategy. The Parks and Recreation segment proposes 7 projects for 2024's capital program with a total budget of $806,950. Of this, $350,000 is allocated as contribution towards the Mount Forest Outdoor Pool and Aquatic Center, a carry forward from last year's deliberations. The other capital projects for 2024 include Arthur Eyes resurfacer replacement, $115,000, Arthur Pool upgrades for $45,000, Mount Forest Old Arena condition assessment for $75,000, Mount Forest Pool demolition for $200,000, Mount Forest Trail signage for $5,000, day camp table and chairs for $16,950. Health and Services has requested a budget of $20,000 for the renovation and repair of the entrance to the cemetery. For 2024, the capital program request amounts to $23.27 million. Excluding the Arthur wastewater treatment plant phase 2 upgrade, the request stands as $9.77 million, consistent with the figure from previous years. Next. As highlighted in the last presentation, this budget has a strong focus on growth. 62% of our capital allocation this year, which approximates to about $14.5 million, is directed towards growth-related projects. In this slide, we show an aggregate view of the 2024 capital plan, and comparing it to prior years, we find that the total program, excluding the Arthur wastewater treatment plan, is quite similar in scale to the last few years. The distribution across service segments showed some variances, but generally still remains consistent. Including the phase 2 upgrade for the Arthur wastewater treatment plan, the closest comparison we have is with the year 2019, which included phase 1 upgrades for the same project. Next. Next slide. From a funding model standpoint, the significant year-over-year changes is the utilization of the gas tax in funding projects in this year's capital program. Additionally, certain assumptions have been made in the preliminary budget draft to show potential impact on the tax levy and gain insight in council's direction on priority projects. Levy setting direction and comfort level with utilization of reserves and reserve funds to facilitate the 2024 capital program is where we'll be seeking direction from council. Next. The purpose of the slide in front of us is twofold. One, to inform council of the full scope of projects considered for 2024, which totaled approximately $28.4 million. Two, to demonstrate that staff have carefully prioritized and assessed the 2024 capital program request being presented to council. We've identified about $5.2 million in projects that could be deferred. The items removed from consideration are as follows: Dublin Street Water Main, $125,000. Hutchison Playground Replacement, $160,000. Kennywood Office Parking Lot for $220,000. The Mount Forest Dam Maintenance at $35,000. Two pedestrian bridge crossings, $25,250 and $96,050 respectively. Reconstruction Fego Street North between Birmingham and Durham Streets for $2.2 million. Reconstruction John Street between Waterloo and Queen Street for $1.8 million. Reconstruction design projects Durham Street East between Main and Fego Street for $100,000, and structural improvements for another $100,000, bringing our total to $5.2 million. The slide being presented, it shows our reserves and reserve fund balances for the last 2 years and balance as of November 15, 2023. This slide will help council in deciding the use of the reserve and reserve funds for the 2024 capital program, as well as the setting of the township's levy for 2024. It shows that our reserves and reserve funds have increased by from 24.7 million at the end of 2022 to 28.6 as of November 15th, 2023. The primary contributor to the increase is the proceeds from the obligatory development charges reserve funds. You will see in the presentation that our taxation reserves and reserve funds have decreased from 2022 year end, largely due to contributions to the 2023 capital program and in-year council approved directions. At this time, staff are asking the council to discuss and provide direction regarding the proposed budget. Specifically, we're looking for council's guidance on the following items: comfort with the revised target levy for 2024, any additions or omissions to be made to the 2024 capital program, the use of reserve and reserve funds to minimize the capital program's impact on the levy, other items that the council may suggest for further inclusion or exclusion in the 2024 draft budget as presented. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. So let's open things up for discussion, questions from council. Councilor McCabe.
Thank you for that, Jerry, and to and the staff as well for getting that pairing that 5.2 million out to get it down under 5%. That was a big job, and so thank you for that. Great presentation. I've got a few questions. I can have go at a few and then let other people go, and then I can come back to it. Yeah, going through this with the Arthur generator, is there a chance that we can get some funding through the emergency management planning? I know they have some. I think they have some funding for that, and that's one of the biggest parts of our emergency planning is that the generator in our. We access funding for that, and if we can, approximately what amount?
Treat me, Alex. We applied for a grant to the provincial government for $48,800. We recently submitted that application. No decision has been made on what that will look like, but from the emergency plannings that have happened this year, it's become important that we have a generator in place at the center. So we have it in the budget. If we get that grant, we offset some of the amounts.
On page 72, it says the project is for side road 10, but I think the description is for Wells Street East. I think that's just a typo. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's a typo. It's actually for it's for Wall Street East. Yeah.
Thank you. And then on page 104 and 110, just with regards to the old arena in Mount Forest, it kind of looks like this is duplicated. Is that?
We have two capital justification sheets in the package, but the amount in the budget is actually 75,000, which is a true ask for this project, as it's only for the design portion of it.
But not 150, so 75. Okay.
Just 75,000, yes.
And then the Mount Forest pool on page 121. Just with regards to the demolition, if we sell this, or if we have an idea to sell it, would the buyer not do that work instead of us? Or what's staff's thoughts on that?
Looks hands up.
Oh, sorry.
Through you, Mayor Lennox. The property where the old Mount Forest pool sits has been looked at by staff. Staff feel that it would be prudent to retain that property for future infrastructure investments. Of course, if council decides they want to go in a different direction, we could, but one way or the other, the cost of demolition of that pool would either be borne by us or borne by the seller and reflected in the selling, or borne by the buyer and reflected in the selling price. So we feel it's best from a liability perspective just to remediate that site, and then future discussions can happen from there.
Okay, thank you. Can let someone else.
Is that it for this round, Councilor McKee?
Yeah, for this round, yes. Thank you.
Anybody
you.
else have questions? Councilor Rankin.
Through you, Mayor Lennox. I was just wondering about the cost for the cemetery pillars to fix the entrance there. Does that include the garden as well that they want to restore?
Through your Mayor, yes, it does.
Okay, thank you. And the vehicle that the building inspector is going to be using, what is he using now? If they're looking for new one for him.
Through you, Mayor Lennox, we've increased our staff in 2023, so this will be a new vehicle for that new staff person.
Right, I understand that, but is that person on staff now?
Yes.
And has he had any vehicle to use?
No, we've been kind of jockeying vehicles around.
And one last question. It's about the intersection of King Street and Main for the crosswalk. I see it's going to be deferred, and I'm sorry, it may add a little more in the budget, but is there no way that some marking couldn't be put there to, as we know, we've had 2 incidents there now, so I'm just wondering if there is some way of having something there so that traffic will slow down for it.
Okay, I'm not sure who to direct that one to.
I'll take a stab at it. So staff have looked at the 4 pedestrian crossings that we had in the budget this year, and we feel like the first 2 proposed are top priority in terms of our assessment, but it's up to council to decide if they would want to make a different direction or decision on that. But this is what we've decided so far.
I think maybe Councilor Rankin is asking a little bit different question in that I think she's, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you're asking for is something less than the full crosswalk. Is there some sort of remedial action we could take that would be less costly to improve the situation there? And I see Tammy's popped up on the screen, so I'm going to let you have a crack at that one, Tammy. So you're muted, by the way.
Through you, Mary Lennox. Staff can review that, but typically line painting is only put down at controlled intersections. So if there's a stop sign, there'd be line painting or traffic lights. So staff would have to work with our consultants to see if that's a feasible option.
Thank you. Any others at this point? Okay, Councillor Hearn, did you have any questions, comments at this point?
Probably things that I should know the answer to, so we'll start from there. The increase in the animal control budget, again, I feel like I should know this. Karen, why is it supposed to go up so much in 2024? Do we need to start enumerating pets again?
I'm not sure. What slide was that? Like a justification sheet. I'm not sure that there's something else lumped in with the
I think that's strictly operating you're asking about, right, Councillor Hearn?
Yes, yeah, so page 10 of the budget, the
Go ahead, Brooke.
operating budget.
Through you, Mayor Lennox, the budget that is typically spent on animal control is quite low. So any increase is going to show up as a larger increase relative to the initial amount. But my understanding is that's really just reflecting the additional hours, both staff time and with our animal control contractor, who've been dealing with some of the various issues that we've had. So we just wanted to make sure we have sufficient funds, but Karen, you can elaborate if you need to.
go ahead, Sharon.
Okay. So our canine control contracts has gone up by a little bit. Last year we were paying approximately 25,000 for that, and this next year we'll be paying $30,000 towards that. So that's really one of the big changes in the expenses for this for animal control.
Any other questions for you, Lisa?
Regarding the vehicle for the building department, Darren, just wondering, again, there's probably a very good reason, but is there a possibility that like a larger SUV would work, or is that a really silly idea? I know they're cheaper to gas up and things are getting expensive.
Through you, Mayor Lennox. We've been working in the background slightly about the possibility of filtering vehicles through different departments. So if we maintain the building department vehicles per the fleet management policy that we have in place, as vehicles age or need to transition from department to department, they fit the needs of every department. That and we're in the building department, especially, probably only in the building department, our vehicles travel on farm fields, farm laneways, construction sites, not just the roads like what our other departments do. So that extra clearance and a little bit extra durability does go a long way.
Thank you. That's it for now.
Okay. I got a few myself here that have come up. Well, first one is really about refreshing my memory. The SVCA one catches my attention, of course. And I know that's the other categories, the service, not the standard category. But I'm just trying to wrap my memory around what how that relates to the dam in Mount Forest. And I believe the dam is still our asset that we're still on the hook for. I just want to know what SVCA's role is versus our role. And I see you eager to answer that, Brooke, so I'll let you have a crack at it.
Through you, Mayor Lennox. Yes, through some discussions with the SVCA, we were able to determine that the dam is ours. And they have been playing kind of a oversight role on our behalf, including getting some of the technical assessments done, including one that was just completed at the end of last year. So they've been the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority has essentially been covering some of those additional costs on our behalf and have sort of spread those around. But now that they've been required to separate out the category 1, 2, and 3, the additional costs really come in under category 2. And that's not including some of the work to fix any issues that are identified. So they would continue to inspect the dam on our behalf. But if we want to undertake further technical studies, we would need to shoulder the cost of that. And the additional maintenance work we'll have to look at budgeting for as well in future years. Now, the good news is that the dam is in really good shape. There's a few minor improvements that could be made, but going forward, that is something that we're going to have to look at budgeting for in a more pronounced way. And I think just because of the way that these new agreements have been structured, it's a little bit more visible, and they've had to account for that additional cost in that they perform sort of that oversight for us versus other municipalities that don't have a dam.
Okay, that was my suspicion, and yeah, I think the review of the life cycle costs of that dam and how we're going to look after that, funding that, is going to be a huge challenge going forward. And we're now the new relationship with SVCA, it's becoming more clear what our role is, I think.
Precisely.
Yes.
No shot at you, Councilor. Okay.
And we're having a meeting at SBCA tomorrow, so I'll bring that up.
Just want to clarify something, Jerry, with you in terms of your forecasting. You're just using the 2023 actual assessment growth as your growth target. You're not doing any other forecasting regarding what assessment growth for 2024 would be?
No, for organic growth, we base that based on the assessment growth that we see within the year, and use that as our primary driver towards organic growth for the year. Yeah.
Okay, so it's just the previous year's growth that we're using.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And just if you can remind me too, in terms of our annual surplus, I think we have a policy in place with how we dispose of that when we get to that. Can you remind me what that is, how we're dealing with that?
We have a reserve fund policy, which ties to our surpluses. So we have thresholds for which reserve funds that each of these amounts going, some of them going to facilities, some of them going to equipment replacement, some going to our general working fund, which is the taxation reserve that we call on within the year for directions we receive from council.
And then the next one refers to, you've done a great job of presenting the budget, the last 2 budget cycles. The piece of the puzzle that I'm not clear about is what the actual expenditures were relative to some of the departments. Like, how close are we hitting our actuals to our budget? Is there opportunities to fine tune a little bit there, or maybe you've already done that?
With exception for the few vacancies we had throughout the year, we're pretty close to what we budgeted for in 2022. We will come under the budget this year, but it's just really because of timing.
A couple more specific questions. The Arthur Pool storage building. I was a little surprised that that one didn't just built a storage building not very far from the pool, and I was wondering what the requirement for storage was there, in that we just have a relatively new building right in that general area. Tammy, are you in charge of that one too?
I had some discussions with Rick. So through you, Mayor, I did a site visit in the summertime, and some of the lifeguards had some suggestions for improvement of the facility. Currently, there's no actual lunchroom for them to eat in. They're eating at the lifeguard post. So the improvements would be an additional shed along the fence of the pool for a lunchroom, and also to keep their pool cleaning equipment. That equipment's also in the lifeguard station, so that would free up some room in there.
Okay. That's news to me. That's glad to hear that. And then the other question I had is something that's not in the budget, but something I'm become more attuned to, I guess I could say. We have a number of bridges across the township that have weight restrictions on them. It's a number of years have gone by and we've dealt with some of them, but there's some others that have still been kind of dragging on. I'm wondering, do we need a longer term plan with some of those bridges to either, rehabilitate them, replace them, or, are we long term going to decommission some of them? And if we are going to extend the time frame when they're going to be weight restricted, I think we should be communicating to the people around them that this is the reality. So I guess I'm just asking for, do we have a longer term vision of how to deal with some of those bridges?
Through you, Mayor Lennox. So staff is currently completing a bridge inspection report update with our consultants. And through that, they'll identify the bridges that require infrastructure repairs or replacements. I think currently there's 3 structures in the township that do have weight limits on them. One of them, structure 9, which we're proposing to be reconstructed in 2024. Once we have that finalized report, staff can review it to provide an update and any recommendations if we feel that any structures should be closed.
Okay, thank you. And Councilor McCabe, you must have a longer list.
I have just a couple more if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
One of the smaller ones is the Arthur Arena stage, and for 30 grand. And I was thinking that this was a project that some of the service clubs in Arthur had brought forward and were maybe thinking of taking on themselves. I don't know if that's changed.
Anybody have any info on that? Tammy? Tom? Who wants
I'll
to
let Tom
go
go.
with this? Tom, go ahead.
Hi, through you, Mayor. Yes, I am working with the Lions Club and the Optimist. We are looking at different staging. There's been no decision made yet. It's roughly 25,000 or 30,000. It sounds like they're going to take along a lot of the expense for this. So we don't need it in the budget for this year. Some of this money can come from operating, I believe.
Okay, thank you for that, Tom. Can I
Go ahead, Councilor McCabe.
Just with regards to John Street, just in between Waterloo and Queen. I know we had chatted about this at the public information sessions. And I know the street needs to be rebuilt and the infrastructure underneath it needs to be replaced, but if there's a turning lane in it, I just can't swallow the idea that we're helping to subsidize a private company that makes millions upon millions of dollars to put a turning lane into their private property for their profit, and the cars will still be lined up. Like, it won't really solve any of that problem. It's just adding another lane that, I mean, people can go around as opposed to them parking on or people waiting for coffee to park on people's lawns. But is there what's the story with that reconstruction, I guess?
Through you, Mayor Lennox.
Thanks, Tammy. Sorry.
Yeah. For 2024, staff have deferred the reconstruction asks for John Street. However, we're asking for an additional $75,000 to go towards reviewing the design and further incorporate some of the feedback that we received from the Public Information Center. We'll also be consulting with the stakeholders to review the design as well. So we'll have further information coming back to council.
Okay, thank you. And one final one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just with the crosswalks, and I know some have been removed for 2024, but there's just such a difference in cost from 255 or 254,000 to versus 96,000. Is there, like, I guess obviously there's curb and maybe more material that goes into one versus the other, but why is it almost triple? Why is one more, I guess, triple the cost than the other? I don't know.
Yes, I'll go. Sure. Sure, I can go. The Main Street pedestrian crossing includes relocation of infrastructure that's currently there. There's a storm. So the others don't have the same scope of work. And that's the reason why the prices vary across from one to the other across all four of them.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Nothing, right?
Through your, the next, it's just for my own clarification. It's nice and I fully support having all new equipment for the fire department when they need it, but I'm just wondering, the old equipment, is there any way it could be either repurposed or are there, say, smaller rural areas that could use it where we could recoup some of the money if they would be able to sell it? And the same for the vehicles that we sell. We have the expenditure amount, but does that include money we might get back for selling the old ones?
So I guess I'll go first for the vehicles and fleet that we sell, and then maybe Chris can jump in for fire. But currently, as part of our request for this year, we have a tractor and a plow. Part of the funding towards this are the cost that we have towards offloading them. So it's not 100% of the cost that you see here that will be applied against the tax levy. If we get 50,000, 60,000, whatever it may be back from selling it or scrapping it, it will apply it against the cost to reduce the impact to the taxpayers.
And the other part of the question was for the fire stuff.
Fire department?
Go ahead, Chris.
Thanks, through you, Mayor Lennox. Yes, fire vehicles are a bit different because our main trucks, we take them out to like 25 years old. So by the time they hit 25 years old, they're pretty much done. We do sell them on an open market, and we do end up receiving a few $1,000s. Sometimes we might get upwards of $10,000, but 25-year plus vehicles are not that. And then the same with our pickup. The pickup trucks we rotate internally, so our goal is to keep them for probably 15 years. So by the time we dispose of a vehicle that way, they will be at least 15 years old, if not more. So we do send them to the auction, and we do get some money back from them, but they're not worth much by the time they hit their end of life.
Thank you.
Were you asking about the filling station and the air bottles as well, or was it just equipment you were asking about?
Just the equipment mainly.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Can I
Go
keep
ahead.
going?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. I'm just wondering what the life expectancy of the Arthur swimming pool is, and if it's close enough that we maybe should be putting something into reserve for it so we won't have the same problem we are with the Mount Forest pool.
Okay. Who wants to tackle that one? Jerry?
Tree Millennials. So we have an asset management plan that is going to be conducted this year, where we'll do a further review of all our capital assets and tag useful life to them again. We'll be able to tell at that point what that looks like and bring that report to council. But generally, we have a facilities reserve. And then we also have a taxation reserve where we put into all our surpluses. So if we're to ever to call on those reserves for any of those projects, we have some funds there. The amounts vary from project to project and from year to year based on what interest we earn, based on how much surplus we get, and then based on the carry forwards that we have for projects. But we have a facilities reserve where some of our surplus is going to, and they can be used for projects like that in the future.
Yeah, sure.
I was just wondering as well, on tacking on to the end of Councillor McCabe's, the street on Fergus between Birmingham and Durham, I was just wondering whether any option was being looked into for using an arborist and using the other methods that Daphne Rapard was mentioning when she was here with her delegation. She did mention that they had several arborists with the green team that would be willing to volunteer their time to do that.
Tammy, go ahead.
For you, Mayor. So staff is putting together a report with all the survey feedback that we received from the Public Information Center. And that report will be coming to the next council meeting on December 11th. And then after that, we'll be working with our consultants to review the proposal for the design and provide further direction as well.
Go ahead.
And this, sorry, I'm not sure about this one, but Industrial Drive, they were talking about its gravel. And I was just wondering if there's any possibility of putting that through to Perth Street. If I know it is costly to do that, but I was just wondering if it has been a concern of some citizens that with that, you might have a chance, if there is a blockage due to an accident or so forth, that people can still get around the north end of town.
Tammy, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Lennox. So the proposal for the pavement on Industrial Drive is the portion that goes to the north. It's just to finish off and complete the small portion of gravel area to bring it up to urban standards. All the lots in that industrial park has now been sold, and all the infrastructure is in the ground now. And as for extending it out to Perth Street, we're completing a growth management plan. And from that, there'll be also a transportation master plan that will review the urban centers for any recommendations for development of future streets.
Any other questions, comments? I have a couple more here. And I'm probably guilty of bringing this one up pretty much every budget cycle. And that's the cemetery. I know that we've recently adjusted our rates at the cemetery, but it continues that we're using tax dollars to subsidize the cemetery, and we have at least 3 other cemeteries in our community that do not enjoy tax dollars to their benefit. And I'm concerned about trying to get that as close to cost recovery as we possibly could, and what that might look like. Karen, go ahead.
Yeah, so I can bring a report to the next meeting of council outlining what the fees are right now and what it actually we would need to charge to be fully cost recovery. And then we can take direction from council as to where you want to fall, somewhere in that.
Okay. And the other question / comment I had was kind of picking up on something that Councillor Rankin said with regard to the Arthur Pool. I've had a resident reaching out to me concerned that we're not having enough water in the pool to prevent it damage from it through the winter. I guess they have some recollection of that sort of situation happening in Mount Forest, and they were very concerned that we weren't taking care of the pool in the appropriate manner. So I just wanted to pass that information along. Any other questions, comments?
I'm good.
So I guess we've gone through a bunch of questions. Well, now we have to get back to the questions that Jerry asked us. Are we comfortable to proceed with the budget as presented? Do we want to make changes to it? And what else did you have there, Jerry?
Additions of the formations from the 2024 capital program.
Right.
These are examples that ones that's already present.
Okay. So I'm looking for feedback from the council on their level of comfort or modification to the budget. Anybody want to be first? Councilor McKinney?
Yeah, I'm not bad with this at all. I like that it's under 5, which is hard to fathom. I know in past we've tried to pare it down from 5, but with all the external influences, is mostly beyond our control here at the municipal level. I think this is something that I can defend publicly if need be. The way it sits right now.
Okay. Anybody else? Councilor Rankin?
Yes, I'm pleased that it went down below 5% as well. And other than the fact that I would like to see something at that one crosswalk, I'll accept it as it is.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Hearn?
Yes, I'm pleased that it's under 5% as well. I mean, of course, I'd like to have it lower, but I can't find any place that would be logical to cut anything, so and keep the township maintained, which we're already struggling to do. So yeah, I'm happy with it kind of where it is, where it's at.
I guess that's back to me now. Yeah, I mean, 5% or close to 5% seems like an awful lot to ask from our residents, especially in a time when lots of them are facing challenges and difficulty as well. But I don't think we can ignore the fact that, we look at our asset management plan as we have it today, which is really focused on our roads and assets. And we already see a big gap. We're in the process of updating that asset management to include other assets like buildings. And I'm pretty confident it's going to show that the gap is even bigger. So, to not work towards trying to address that, I think would be a huge mistake on our part and just bring longer term pain to the community. So I think it's, if anything, we're probably not doing enough in terms of capital renewal. But I guess I'm prepared to live with what we have proposed, try to make some incremental gains on it year over year, and we continue to need our provincial and federal partners to make contributions to help us take care of the infrastructure. I forget the exact numbers of the study, but there was something like, we look after about 60% of the infrastructure assets for the nation in municipal world, with about 10% of the revenue to do so. So it's a pretty hard place for us to do it on our own, but we have to do our best, I think. Councillor McCabe.
Well, and to go along with that, I mean, every dollar that we collect, we get about 37 cents out of it. So I think we're doing it quite a bit with what we actually get to keep when the rest of it goes to the province and to the county. So I know there's always talk about the province making us whole, and I'm not really sure what that means, and I'm not sure they know what that means yet either. So it'll be interesting to see what that does to affect budgets going forward.
Yeah, and you look at our reserves, a big chunk of the reserve funds that we have are in that development charge fund. And then go look at that one, which looks very healthy, but then go look at the other one, which looks at all the infrastructure we need to build to accommodate the growth, and it doesn't come anywhere close to covering that. So we need housing in our community, in our province, in our country. But is it appropriate to ask all of our local taxpayers to foot the bill for that?
Well, and that's the 108 million after some of the funding is stuff that we just have right now. It's not new stuff yet.
Right.
That's the crazy part.
Exactly. So we're in a big hole, and I don't know how we resolve it with the limited resources we have. Any other questions or comments? So do you need a resolution of direction from us at this point, Jerry?
So the council is good on the percentage that,
I think it sounds like we're swallowing hard and ready to move on.
and then what about the reserves? Are you looking for an amount that they want to contribute from reserves, or no?
We've already gone this.
We have, so if council is good with the proposed levy as it is, we'll be fine with the reserves directions that we currently have through that levy agreement.
I think it would need to recognize that there's a big decision coming with the financing of the wastewater treatment plant out there. And that's expected. I don't want to put words in Gary's mouth, but I suspect there's going to be reserve contributions, there's going to be development contributions. Probably that.
That's correct.
So I'm suggesting that we keep the first recommendation that you receive the report. And the second recommendation that was council discussed the budget and provide for instruction to and that council approves. Budget. Represented with a levy.
Impact of 4.94%.
Increase of 4.9%.
4.94.
As presented with a 4.94% levy.
Okay, do I have a mover and a seconder for that? It's Councilor McCabe, Councilor Rankin. Any other discussion? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So I guess that all that's left is our confirming bylaw. So I have a recommendation here that bylaw number 111-23 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North at its special meeting held on November 29th, 2023, be read a first, second, and third time and enacted. I got a mover and a seconder for that, please. Councilor Hearn and Councilor Rankin, thank you. All those in favor? That's carried. And adjournment. Recommendation that the special council meeting of November 29th, 2023 be adjourned at 3:06 p.m. Moved by Councilor McCabe, seconded by Councilor Rankin. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you, everybody.